Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is a special presentation. Around noon on Monday, Wizards of the Coast did something I thought they would never do. And no, this is not clickbait. They posted a job solicitation indicating they're hiring a manager for the Magic Judge program. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while now, you might remember a video I posted about 9 months ago titled State of the Judge Program, in which I briefly went over the history of Magic's Judge program and commented on the then current state of affairs. As I mentioned in that video, I personally believe that we had seen the end of the story as far as an official judge program administered by Wizards of the Coast was concerned. Well, they surprised me when they published what can only be interpreted as a clear public intention to change course. To be perfectly honest, I was not going to make a video covering this development. I'm an education channel, not a Magic news and updates one, so it felt a little bit outside of the scope that I wanted to have for this channel, but several people reached out to me and asked me for my thoughts, and I'm aware of my status as one of the most public-facing Magic judges, and I suppose that makes me especially qualified to comment on this issue compared to some of the other Magic YouTubers that I was originally going to refer the story to. Now, I talked in a lot more detail about the history of the Judge program in that State of the Judge program video I mentioned, so you can check that out if you'd like a fuller explanation. But the short version of the story is that Wizards originally founded a Judge program to handle the responsibility of officiating Magic tournaments, but later decided to phase out their own involvement. First, they spun off the Judge program into a separate business entity called Judge Academy, which they provided various forms of support to, but did not have any direct oversight or control of. Then they ended their partnership with Judge Academy, which folded shortly afterwards. This course of events is largely thought to be the result of some lawsuits being brought against Wizards by judges alleging that the work judges did at tournaments qualified them as employees of Wizards of the Coast and therefore entitled them to certain benefits under labor laws. The idea being that Wizards intended to separate themselves from judges in order to reduce the liability. I and many other judges assumed that this withdrawal of support would be permanent, but it seems that isn't the case. I still haven't come up with a credible narrative that satisfactorily explains this reversal, so I'll leave the speculation about that to the good people of the comments section. It's pretty much confirmed that the Judge program is coming back under Wizards of the Coast's banner, though. Wizards has publicly stated their intention to hire someone to lead the strategic development and execution of the Magic the Gathering Judge program. They go on to state that the person hired for the role will build, own, and evolve the vision, structure, and execution of the Magic the Gathering Judge program globally. Now, if I was a news and updates channel, I'd probably spend approximately 8 minutes and 1 second reading through line by line on that job posting in a suitable internet voice, while paraphrasing every second or third sentence after reading it to make it seem like I was actually contributing something to the discussion. But I'll just leave a link in my description, and if you're interested, you can read through on your own time. From what I can see, the job posting indicates that Wizards is intending this position to be pretty much the same as it was before. Yes, it pains me to have to say this because it reminds me of how old I am, but I expect that last line might have surprised some of you. In fact, during the era of the Wizards-run Judge program, there was a person who worked at WotC whose job title was Judge Program Manager, and this person was responsible for many of the same things that the recent posting lists as job functions of the new Judge Program Manager, including setting certification and advancement criteria, maintaining a code of conduct, and acting as a liaison between the Judge program and various other stakeholders. Given the similarity, I think it's reasonable to assume that the Judge program Wizards is developing will be substantially similar to what we had before Judge Academy. So, with that in mind, I want to go through what I think the future holds, and I'll talk about what specific changes we might see, how likely I think the change is, and what I think the most significant results of those changes might be. The first major change that I have my eyes on is Judge Foils. Maybe you've seen or heard of these before, but for those who haven't, Judge Foils are promotional cards that were given to judges. They were officially referred to as Judge Gift cards, but a lot of people call them Judge Foils because, well, they were always foil. Now, this is before every rare had 3,219 different treatments, so that was actually really special. For a lot of these cards, the Judge Foil was the only way to get that card as a foil. Now, Judge Foils started way back in 1998 and were distributed to judges via a variety of channels. When Judge Academy was around, they got the Judge Foils from Wizards to distribute to their membership. Since they went defunct, there have not been any Judge Foils given out. Bringing these back seems like a slam dunk. They were extremely popular with judges and players, and they would cost Wizards next to nothing to bring back. Going along with Judge Foils is Judge Conferences. Unlike Judge Foils, I don't expect anyone who's never been a judge to actually know what those are. If you've ever been to a professional or academic conference, they were pretty similar. Judges would gather together and participate in seminars, lectures, or workshops that were organized and presented by other judges or subject matter experts. Judge conferences were a great opportunity for judges to learn, network, and come together as a community. This is before there was a lot of educational content on magic rules available in video form, so presentations on rules or policy topics were always popular, and a great way for new judges to solidify their understanding. If you'd like a flavor of what these presentations were like, I have recordings of several of them on this channel. Now, I get a lot of comments regarding these videos that they're very valuable and entertaining, in particular my random situation generator workshops, which were always very popular. So many people ask me to bring back more of this content, and I wish that I could. There's just one problem. It's the same reason why there aren't more judge conferences anymore. It's not like there's anything proprietary about the format of a conference. It's not like we would need to license the concept from Wizards in order to organize one. Heck, I know a bunch of judges on Facebook. There's no reason I couldn't just pick a weekend to host a judge conference and invite a bunch of judges to it. Well, here's the thing though. There's about half a dozen judges in my state. To get a conference, enough judges for a full conference, you would need to get judges from about 2 or 3 hours away. You know what makes it a lot easier to convince judges to travel 2 to 3 hours to an event? When everybody who shows up gets a pack of judge foils. Yes, that was historically one of the ways that you could get judge foils. Once the foils went away, there were sporadic attempts to get people to come together for judge conferences, but nothing like the old days. Especially during COVID, there were also experiments with digital conferences. These were okay, but they took a lot of effort to organize, and like many other things, it turns out that conferences just worked and felt worse without getting to actually physically be present with the other people in the same room. Now, another change that I expect is the money aspect. Now, when Judge Academy succeeded the Wizards-run judge program, they required members to pay annual dues to remain certified, something that had never been a requirement before. Currently, the Judge Foundry, which is the certifying agency that popped up to replace Judge Academy in the USA and Canada, requires a monthly subscription of $5. This money goes to fund various administrative expenses such as their website, paying professional staff such as lawyers and accountants contracted by the program, and other expenses that the program might incur. Judge Foundry does a pretty decent job of making sure the money gets transparently accounted for because this was a concern around their predecessor organization. In any case, these payments were, of course, extremely unpopular with many who had been judging in the previous regimes. Several judges quit rather than, as they put it, paying to volunteer. Because Wizards of the Coast already has people taking care of most of the administrative expenses the judge program would incur, picking up the tab is not a large concern for them. Besides, they've already shown willingness to commit $100,000 to $150,000 a year to support the program by hiring someone to manage it. It's not out of the question that they'll actually spend a bit more than that either. In the old program, there were other leadership positions who were compensated directly by Wizards, and it's within the realm of possibility that those roles might return also eventually. Another thing that I hope to see change will be related to the criteria for membership. In the past, there was a scandal in the judge program when it came to light that some judges had been found guilty of certain criminal acts. I won't say exactly what because I don't want to get demonetized, but suffice to say there were crimes that could get you put on a registry and maybe affect how close to a school that you could legally live. Now, it's not hard to see how it might specifically be concerning to have someone like that at a tournament for a card game that was sometimes played by minors. When this story broke, Wizards scrambled to do something, and what they ended up with was changing their WPN agreement to include a line where tournament organizers would be responsible for hiring judges who weren't a threat to the players. Now, some organizers actually do this. For example, every major event now has a line in their application saying that everyone who applies will be checked against the national registry. But at store-level events, the phrase "don't ask, don't tell" seems to be a little bit more representative of my personal experiences. I'll say I really hoped Wizards had done more. For example, when I became a Pokemon judge, I had to undergo a background check before I got certified. The Pokemon company paid for the costs of this rather than asking every store that I work for to have to do their own check themselves, which makes a lot more sense to me. I'll confess to being particularly sensitive to this issue since I personally was groomed by someone who turned out to be on one of those lists at the beginning of my Magic judge career, shortly after I started traveling to bigger tournaments. While I was able to get out before anything happened, I'm sure some other judges or judge candidates can't say the same thing. The safety of all the participants is a fundamental expectation of anyone who goes to a Magic event, and I think it's something everyone can agree should be taken seriously. Now that we've talked about a few of the things that I think might change, I want to close out with something that I think will stay the same. I don't expect anything to change right away. Let's say Wizards of the Coast hired someone tomorrow. They won't. It'll probably take a few weeks, maybe even a month, but whatever. Even if there was a new judge program manager tomorrow, that person would still need to, build a judge program. They can't just roll something out without a plan for how to certify judges, advance judges, probably have some form of resources for judge education and training. Even if they copy liberally from what's already there or what existed in the past, adapting it to meet the new program's vision will take time. I think optimistically we might be looking at some new rollouts around the end of this year or maybe the beginning of next year, but I would be surprised to see anything substantive before then. But once we do get underway, I expect to see some actually meaningful changes. Think about it. Which do you think would be easier? For the judge program manager to see that there's a problem, brainstorm ways to fix it, decide on a plan, and put that into action? Or for a committee of 5 people to all agree on something being a problem, all agree on a plan to fix it, and then put that plan into action? Dictatorships get a bad rap, but if you're looking for change, having one person with the authority and responsibility to get things done tends to make everything go a lot smoother. A point that was pointed out by one of my colleagues on my previous videos on the subject. The judge program has a long and storied history, full of change, and indeed, this will be the 3rd major structural change since I started judging for the win. And although the future is always uncertain, one thing isn't changing. As long as the rules of Magic are 300 pages long, live events will require judges. I've been one of those judges for the past decade, and no matter what form the program ends up taking, I'm looking forward to the next 10 years. But that's all I have for you today. How are you doing? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.